Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of our stories in facilitating software architecture and design. Very happy you're tuned back in either by listening or watching and listening or reading even. And today we have one of our co-organizers as Virtual DDD, Krisztina, with us. We know her for a long time. Hello, Krisztina. Very curious about your story of today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. If something to tell about PayFit, then it's a source of millions of decisions. I can practice this decision making or not making every day. When we discussed about this session, I was thinking about, okay, which story should I tell? Because there are so many. And I would tell you one from the beginning of my journey at PayFit. We just decided that we had to start modernizing our architecture because we were too successful. We need more scalability and flexibility. So we introduced the new paradigm to implement our software based on event-driven architecture. And one of the first teams with whom I was discussing about events and domain events, not just any kind of events, was a very small team, fast, very proud of their own software. And we had 1 hour to agree on which domain events should they publish, because everybody was okay. And we discussed for more than an hour about when should these events be published. What do they mean? What is a domain event? A domain event is something telling that something important happened to the business. And they just weren't there. They didn't understood what I mean with something important and what's the difference. In the team said it was a technical JSON something sent to the messaging. That's it. The small word domain was completely ignored because it was some buzzword, I assume. I don't know what it was. So they were just not there. And I saw that we are going not towards the end of the world, but we are just not progressing. They were insisting on some technical events, which I could see in my head that this will go in the wrong direction. And it will lead to a lot of duplicated code, which happened. Afterwards, I saw teams writing and like they were implementing the same logic everywhere, just because these triggering events were technical ones. In 1 hour, I tried all the ways to convince them to explain nicely or not nicely to show once the problem what can happen, and they not there. It was a team of 4 people, I think, or 5 people, 4 people. 2 of them had no opinion, and 2 of them, or 1 of them, were very proud of the source code. And the reason was so insane that I had no words for it. He said the repository is so clean, he doesn't want to mess it up. I was speechless for this argument, but then I tried, and after 1 hour, I decided to give it up because the decision can't be taken by me. What would they have implemented if I say, no, you are doing it like this? They would not implement it at all. So my decision was very early, okay, my intention is not to go for the right way, but to give them the opportunity to start learning. And how can you learn the best if not by failing? So I learned lately about this quote from George Box. Not the first one. I knew the first one, all models are wrong. And some of them are useful. But the second one, that's so important. It is inappropriate to be concerned about mice when there are tigers abroad. This is my main driver. What is important? It's important that I am right. It's important to have the best events ever. This was the very beginning. It was the first months of our whole transformation. It was not important. Important was that they connect to the messaging, that they start thinking about that they fail. And I didn't expect what happened. They failed spectacularly because this was a system with a very high throughput, very high usage. So they ended up after 1 month publishing 90% of the domain events from the whole company. and not domain events, from the events of the whole company. And from those 90%, maybe one per day was helpful. Everything else was filtered out by all the other teams. This was the repeated code. Everybody was filtering this insane noise. And 1 month later, from the team pinged me. I don't know if it was just me or the whole company, but he shared the logs. Let's see, 19% they are filling the message flow, the message bus. And I was telling him, and you add at least 3 logs for this. So how much money you throw out of the window, which everybody filters out, totally useless. And 2 months later, he came back and said, I am so sorry that we didn't listen to you. Actually, he was one of those undecided person. So he said he was so sorry that he didn't try to go on that way, which I was advising for. So this is the story. They didn't know me. Why should they believe me? I'm an empirical person. I will never say you do it because I have more experience or because I know better or whatever, because that's not. Who knows that I know better? Maybe I'm not. They needed proof. And the best thing in this story was we created 2 talks out of it, internal talks in the company. And the team who implemented it came back and presented the talk and showed how they changed. We changed it after 2 months. We changed the events. I could use this story to show the leadership that it took us 8 months to replace 3 events. 8 months. It's insane. That just takes too long. So we can make mistakes, but it takes too long to fix them. It was the perfect story for every lesson I ever wanted to share about domain events and why it is important. And it ended up with a LFC process, a standard process where everybody who wants to publish a domain event needs to write an LFC, explain why, what is the process, and then we discuss the content. And it is shared publicly so that others can know, okay, there is a new event, I can listen to it. So a lot of good things. I think it was a huge success. And for the team, it was the best lesson ever.
Yeah, I think that's one of the harder challenges. In the previous episode, Pete already mentioned, right? What if you think the teams are wrong? And your example clearly goes further onto that part where sometimes people need to understand why we do certain things in architecture, I can imagine, right? Because it's for the longer term. We do architecture for the longer term. But if you never experienced that part, then you're like, why are we spending all this waste to do it? Because it's easy, right? Let's just do it like this. But yeah, I think that's a hard balance. So how did you cope with that balance of, well, you said we'll let them experiment, but you want to let them experiment in a safe way, right?
Because I knew that this is not the tiger. It was not deciding the war.
Yeah. But still, there's some wasted time because I can imagine that management are like, oh, you just wasted 8 months of money.
They didn't literally wasted 8 months because the problem was they really went for the easiest way. And I wanted to see that lesson. That your easiest way, it took them 1 day to implement all this. It takes 8 months to correct your mistake. So stop going for the easiest way because something is wrong if it's so easy. It means you didn't invested any brain in this. You just dropped the code and then said, task done. You didn't build any architecture. You didn't do a design work. You didn't think it through. You've just implemented the task, finished the task. That's it. And this is the big lesson what we still need to learn. And I hope this is also a lesson. I know that this is a lesson what the leadership needs to know. Going fast is often just wrong.
If you look at the current, how do you say it, landscape, right, where more coding by generating comes into play, so more architecture becomes more important, I can imagine, right? But a lot of code don't get this experience in architecture because decisions were made for them instead of letting them experience why you do it.
Yeah. And I wanted them to see what can happen. It was very early, so I knew that the waste what happened was in all the other teams. And I was fighting with them. I got really angry because I was seeing the same messages. I was collecting the same messages. These 3 teams are sharing the same, implementing the same. That's a waste. This is why it took 8 months, because they needed to remove all that duplicated, wasted code everywhere, because this one team had a very thin layer of business logic which should have been in their domain, and they just didn't. So it was a lesson for everybody around it. It was a start of
Were they
change.
were they part of, like, did they after it became obvious that this thing had gone wrong? Were they part of the solution? Like, did they learn how
They
to?
triggered the
Did-
solution. They came to me with the logs and with not apologizes, but really saying, "Then we did a wrong decision. How should we fix it?" And then we used this LFC process, and they went to the 3 teams which needed 5 different type of events, created the list, and invested. That was the moment when they invested 1 week, not good, maybe 10 hours, to find out exactly what they need. It was also, actually, it was not bad, because they, after this shock, and they saw how it explodes, they could finally understand, okay, who needs this? Because we started it on not the best way. Or maybe it was the only way. So we started, okay, let's just implement some domain events and then see how it goes. We didn't know who we needed. So first we just dropped all the mess on everybody. Then in the first 2 months, 3 teams implemented the consumption. And then they could go to these teams and ask, okay, what exactly do you need? So it ended up with a curated list of, I think, 5 events in totally, very specific, and it went down to 1%.
So in a way, doing the mistake also kind of helped clarify the requirements.
Yeah.
But you knew ahead of time that this was gonna be painful, but you were new as well. So how did you know that they wasn't the right design? Is it because they didn't spend time designing?
Because they were technical events. They were everything about themselves. They were saying, my service does this and that, and who cares? Yeah, okay. They were like logs. You don't publish the events as logs. They are relevant for you, but contextless from others. Oh, out of this experiment, I also wrote down some not guidelines. How to test that my domain event is a domain event. And the rule number 1, you don't need to ask what happened, because it's embedded, the context, you know what happened, why it happened. So you know how you can react. If someone just drops something, I deleted code, says nothing. So you need the context embedded. If you need to ask, and this is why I got all those messages, people were asking, when do you publish this or that? It means it's not good enough. So this was really great. For me, it was a great success story at the end. And for the team, yes, they decided not to invest in advance, and they learned this lesson. And they did. And they came back and asked for, okay, how to do it right. It wasn't me.
So have you ever experienced also in the past that you gave people that, because I recognize your story, in the past, when I just started working, my architect back then was like, oh yeah, just try it and see where you end up, because they already knew, of course, that I was going to fail, but it was a great learning experience. But I also seen people stepping into like cognitive dissonance, right? That they don't want to own up to their mistakes, so they're gonna try to do everything that is necessary to cover up their mistake or make sure that it's gonna work. Have you experienced that, and how would you deal with that?
Oh, yeah. One of my former companies, I had a colleague like this. Everybody else was wrong but him. I think it is much harder. I was thinking about the other story of a former colleague. He was really a good engineer and good thinker, but he was a big, powerful guy, and he liked to be right. Beside this one principle that don't think about mice if the tigers are abroad, my other principle is if you feel that the goal is still that you are right, then you are wrong. So the goal can't be that you are right. And this guy was very cool, but he didn't know differently. So I took it as a challenge to stop him, to not accept any of these arguments which are like, I want this because I like this. To force him to give me real professional, I call it professional arguments. And it changed him. So he stopped being right. He had to think about why. And then go to numbers and facts and things like this, and not just because I say so. And this other person who was continuously hiding, putting the blame on everyone else, I never managed to turn him around. So I just gave it up.
Yeah, I mean, you can't control people in that way, right? So yeah, but I like that heuristic. I think it's a value-based heuristic, right? I'm not sure exactly how you say, but I do the same thing. I just expect myself to be wrong, because then people can challenge me and I'm open for their story. So I guess that's what you meant, right?
I don't expect to be wrong, but after this meeting with the team, I learned about myself. Well, I took a conclusion for myself. I didn't manage to convince them. So the 1 hour was not enough to make them change their mind. And that has millions of reasons. Like they were not there yet. They just really never experienced this. So 1 hour is not enough to explain what event-driven architecture is and what's the difference between domain events and technical events. So I left with a good feeling, okay, do it. It takes you 1 day, and then you will see very fast that it's wrong. And it happened exactly like that. So I failed not to be right. I failed to teach them in that 1 hour. And that's okay because it's impossible.
It's interesting because that reminds me. So Sheen, who dives into decision-making theories, he will be in one of the next episodes. She says a decision is also when it's implemented. So you could take a decision as an architect, but if you're not implementing it, how can you be sure that that's the decision that people go to, right? So an architectural decision is also a part of that. Is also the decision, the implementation. And if you're not part of the implementation, it might be that decision that you made doesn't get implemented.
I'm sure that it doesn't get. This is at PayFit, my main principle is I don't decide anything so I had to make decisions, I had to get somewhere, but I want the teams and the people to say, yes, we want to do it like this. And I'm doing this the same in my own team. We are doing the same. If the team is not convinced, we go in what way? And then I come back 2 weeks later and ask, okay, how do you feel? Don't you think we should reconsider this? Because the doability is the most important thing. It makes no sense to make any decisions or paperwork if it won't be done.
It looks like you're really implementing the advice process. And in a way, I kind of wondered if with the story that you told us, were you tempted to kind of babysit their decision? Basically, you left them and you were like, okay, you are going to do this and you're going to basically let them fail. And it was a kind of deliberate choice. But were you keeping track of it, or were you just going to wait for them to come back to you? Or what was your signal to return to this? Because, I mean, like most things, when something like this is going on, you also have 100 other things going on, and then maybe you forget about it.
I don't forget about it. I accompanied them for the 8 months and asking, okay, how can we correct what they wrote the story, and then I jumped in and say, okay, don't write the story, replace all the events. Go one event after another, go smaller steps, because each removed technical event is already a big progress. So we were continuously in progress, and I asked them after, I don't know if they came first or I came first. But we were talking all the time. So every few weeks, and asking how it's going and discussing how it could have been done differently. So I do this with almost everything and every team. In the meantime, not with every team, but I have around 30 channels called something with domains. So I don't let go. It is not. I'm not a consultant. I am part of this. And if I took the first question, okay, let's have a domain modeling session, and I didn't manage to convince them to do it properly, then it can't be that I just say, you messed it up, and now it's on you to solve it. Because it is actually an asynchronous domain modeling session going on for months or years.
Yeah.
So,
It is like an asynchronous. I love that. It is an asynchronous domain modeling session. It takes about 8 or 9 months, but
Yeah.
but I love it that you're framing it as a success, because I can imagine that other people would be there the first time and go like, okay, I know I have no way to convince them, and I can live with that. I also need to live with the comfort of knowing that they will fail, and then being validated to some. You don't feel good when they fail. You kind of go like, okay, now we need to deal with the uncertainty of when do we fix it. And it's quite basically you're describing a very uncomfortable process for a lot of people. It requires a lot of
That's
skill.
how often you have to do this.
Yeah.
I started this convincing since I am in the IT. As a woman, you need to convince in a way without making the other feel bad or something, because then it would just reject. I think I have a lot of practice in this.
Yeah. So thank you, Krisztina, for your story. I think that was it again. We're a little bit longer in a good way on time. So for everyone listening in or reading this or watching and listening in, thanks again for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed and could learn from Krisztina, her story. And please like, subscribe, share it, and tell us your story. And especially, please come to Discord. We're all three are there, and we can discuss this story further. And see you next time. Bye-bye.
Next time. Bye.
Bye.